Hey guys, what's up? MadSeason here, back with another video for you. The World of Warcraft Classic release is approaching fast, and everyone is scrambling to figure out what they want to do. What class will I play? What server type? How many diapers do I need to buy? In this video, I wanted to make a guide of sorts and build a checklist on how to prepare for the launch of Classic World of Warcraft, and also just give you some tips in general. So let's get the obvious stuff out of the way first, starting with the class. While I won't go into each class one by one, the main thing I'll say is that the classes in Classic are very niche. It's not like the current game, where if you have a tank spec, you're just as capable as tanking as everyone else. For example, paladins, druids, and even shamans are capable of tanking, but warriors are seen as quote the best tanks in Classic, and as a result, most serious raiding guilds will focus their recruiting on warriors. For healers, priests are seen as the quote best, and as for DPS, retribution paladins will have trouble keeping up. It's the early days of MMOs where all of this stuff is still being worked out. There really wasn't a standard, so as a result, the balance is questionable in a lot of places. I am a believer that this time around, due to our increased knowledge and skill, things will be a bit easier, and therefore guilds will be more lax. I mean, people 5-manned Onyxia back in 2005, and that was pre-AQ40, so I'm pretty sure you can afford to have a retribution paladin or two in the raid. But still, in regards to raiding, class balance, or the lack thereof, is definitely something to consider. You can still find a guild as a DPS druid, it's just going to be harder than say compared to a combat rogue, so you gotta stay realistic as well. As you can see here, I've listed each class and their viability as I remember it. This is a super fast and loose description, and it really doesn't do the classes justice. In my opinion, one of the cool things with Classic is that these classes bring more than just raw DPS, heals, or mitigation to the table. They have their own and completely unique tools and buffs that still makes them valuable to any raiding guild. For example, druids bring Innervate, which is crucial, and also they're the only ones who have a battle res back then. So pretty much every class has some unique aspect to them. If you'd like a more in-depth preview and you have an hour to spare, I do have a full class picky guide for you in the description. It's a tough choice for sure, and with how long it takes to level and the level boosts, it's a super important decision as well. And the next question is always what race to choose. Similar story going on here with classes. Again, this is the age before hyper balance. Certain races will 100% have an edge over other races, whether it be for PvE or PvP, and it's another important thing to consider. My go-to example is always weapon specialization. Humans get increased skill to maces and swords, back when you actually had weapon skill, and this reduced your glancing blow penalty, which were basically weaker attacks that resulted from hitting enemies that were a higher level than you. It's super important for raiding, and it's one of the most important stats in the game in fact. As a result, human rogues and warriors have an edge in terms of damage compared to other races. And on the PvP side of things, orcs get that passive 25% resistance to stuns, which during Classic is huge in PvP. Things were much more bursty back then, and you could really die in a single stun, so this is one of the best racials in the game for PvP. In the description, I'll have a link to every single race and their benefits, and again, if you want a more in-depth coverage, I do have dedicated videos for both the Horde and Alliance also in the description. And the next choice is the server, which can also be pretty tough. Well, first you have PvE versus PvP, which if you started after BFA will be new to you. It's pretty self-explanatory though. On PvE servers, you have to manually flag to engage in PvP with other players in most zones, and for PvP, everyone can attack each other at all times, with the exception of the starting zones. Due to the absence of flying in the game, the world PvP scene as a whole is much more active. You will run into skirmishes when trying to complete quests, or farming a high level spot, or just traveling to a dungeon or raid. The Stranglethorn Vale zone in particular was always a bloodbath, and the Blackrock Mountain will be the stage for many PvP skirmishes. What you prefer is entirely up to your playstyle. Some love it and some hate it, and just know that with no war mode, it's harder to avoid. Really, it's impossible if you take into consideration no flying, and not just that, but also stuff like cross-realm grouping. The game as a whole today has many workarounds in avoiding PvP, whereas in Classic, your decision is made when you hit the character creation button. Another thing to take into consideration are streamers, which is also a point of contention. Streamers are of course a new thing that didn't exist in the original run, and they're problematic to some players, a benefit to others, and to some insignificant. Again, it's another preference sort of thing, and every streamer has a different community. Some will have a negative impact on the game, and others a positive one. For example, a negative that some people see are the rabid communities that follow them, and a positive aspect are some of the events that they put on, such as the dueling tournaments. Personally, these days, I'm more in favor of streamers because I like the events, but I'm also a streamer myself, so I guess not the most objective person to ask. There do exist videos on some of the reasons why people avoid streamer servers, which you may find handy. I think this one by Classic Wins covers most of it pretty well, and you can find that in the description. There also exists a website called avoidstreamers.com that you may also find handy. Here you can find a full list of all of the bigger streamers and what impact that they have on the game, so do what you will with all of that. So you got your race, your class, and server picked. Now what? Well, now you need a name, of course, and if you're like me, this is something you can spend hours on in the character creation screen, so it's best to think of that now. Start making a list of your top names in order so you can get in there right away when the game launches. And this depends on when you're watching this video, but you can reserve your name 2 weeks prior to the launch. Do note though that you have to be subscribed, which may or may not be worth it to you. Appearance can also be tough. Luckily though, there do exist many websites out there that emulate the character creation options for Classic. A popular one is Wowhead. So that might be something that you want to mess with before release, especially if you want to pick a popular name and you're waiting that first day for those name reservations. I'll have that linked in the description. And another tough decision will be your professions. It's pretty advantageous, I feel, to level your professions as you're leveling your character in the game, especially if they're gathering, so you should start thinking about that now. For the launch of the game, I really like skinning because it's quick, easy, and it provides a generous amount of silver from just vendoring, which will be crucial in the very beginning. When things first kick off, the economy will be growing still, and you'll make the majority of your gold from these vendors rather than the auction house. People can't spend any gold if they don't have it yet, so I'll be grabbing skinning myself and get some extra money until level 60, and then switch to my normal profession. And also, make sure that you don't neglect your secondary professions that everyone can train, and that's cooking, fishing, and first aid. As for what professions though, it's another tough decision. Just like with the races and classes, the professions are much more substantial in the game. One in particular that'll give you a tremendous edge over the others is engineering. They have a variety of bombs and gadgets that are super useful for both PvE and PvP, and it's seen as the quote best because of that. The other ones for the most part don't really have an effect on combat and are just preference and synergy. For example, herbalism synergizes pretty well with rogues because they can gather Fade Leaf, which is needed for their blinding powder, and Swift Thistle, which they need for their Thistle Tea. You'll save a lot of gold if you're an herbalist rogue. Again, I did also cover this very thoroughly. Not to just turn this video into a plug for my other videos, but it's such a broad subject, and if I were to go over it here, we'd be here for an hour. So again, if you want more detail with that, I'll have another video for you in the description. Addons are another thing that you should sort out. In Classic, there are no quest markers nor dungeon maps, and many of the other modern conveniences that the current game offers you. While I personally like it that way, and will be foregoing that stuff, you may find the game to be annoying without it. So check out your favorite add-on site, mine is CurseForge, and go through the add-ons and pick out the ones that you like, and get those installed first thing. A popular one is Questy, which handles all of the questing waypoints, just like in the current game, so a lot of people like that one in particular. And expanding further on that, you can also mess with your system settings before the servers are up. There's a button off to the right, so set up your graphics and whatnot, and definitely go through that as well. And since we touched on it a bit, there are some things that you should keep in mind with a new server, especially if you're new to Classic. In Vanilla, you'll find that you need to train all of your abilities. You can only get them from class trainers, who can be found in the major cities and low-level questing hubs, and a big mistake that people will make is that they'll train everything. Depending on your professions, you'll find that early on you'll be barely scraping along with gold, so it's wise to look at each skill and only train the best ones. For example, maybe you can forgo some of the hunter tracking in exchange for a new serpent sting, or maybe the warrior's pummel ability isn't all that crucial to level up right away since it's just some extra damage. So just something to keep in mind. Super useful for saving up for your mount, so let's talk about that as well. You get your 60% speed mount at level 40, and your 100% speed at level 60, and of course no flying in Classic, and you may have heard that it's quite a feat to be able to afford it at the appropriate level, and it's absolutely true. Not taking any discounts into consideration, between the mount and training, 60% cost 100 gold total, and 100% cost 1000, which is a small fortune in Classic. You can get 10% off by reaching Honored with the appropriate faction, and another 10% from reaching rank 3 in PvP, which is quite easy. Unless you're using the auction house, the level 40 training is very tight, usually requiring you to go out of your way to farm some gold, and maybe level up your professions. For a fresh server, it's a bit more tricky because, like I mentioned, no one really has any gold to spend at that point. You can pull it off, I'm sure, but it's just going to take a bit more effort. I always say that fishing is low-key the best profession for gold while leveling. There are low-level fish that are super valuable that at high levels will be too lazy to farm, and it's always worth it if you saw an oily blackmouth school to go fish it up. These are used for free action potions, which is one of the best potions in the game even at max level. The deviate fish is used for the savory deviate delight, which is one of the few appearance altering items back then, also super valuable. All this is to say though, if you start saving early and watching your spell training and getting your professions locked down from launch, you'll be in a much better position for affording your mounts and mount training. And some more miscellaneous tips here are, if you plan on going hardcore in the launch, is to go for the title charm. In the Arathi Highlands zone, located in the waters right here, is the NPC Prince Nazjack, and he can drop a trinket called the Title Charm, which stuns a target for 3 seconds. Due to the shortage of trinkets in general in Classic, this is insanely good, particularly for PvP, and it's something that's going to be insanely camped even at the max level. So, if you plan on no-lifing it, and you're one of the first to reach level 41-ish, definitely check this out to see if he spawned. And in the same vein, if you're a hunter, you're going to want to tame Broken Tooth. Back in Classic, before everything was homogenized, hunter pets had different attack speeds. Spell pushback was also insane in Classic, so for PvP, the faster the pet, the better. Broken Tooth is one of 2 pets in the game to have an attack speed of 1.0, the other being a bat in the Zul'Gurub upgrade, which won't unlock until Phase 4. So, as soon as you hit level 37, you should check out his spawn locations, which can be found right here in the Badlands, and see if you can get lucky, because this will be another thing that'll be super camped at level 60. But let's step outside of the game for a moment, shall we? Into that scary place called the real world. Ah, it burns. Ah, man. Well, the gameplay sucks, but I guess the graphics are alright. Uh-oh, girls. Never mind, let's get back inside. I didn't sign up for Mythic mode. Let's regroup and study up on other brave souls who've laid the path before us. What you're watching is archived video footage from the original release of the game, November 23rd, 2004. So, this surely has some useful information in it.
This is the World of Warcraft at 10:45. We're still installing it. We plan on playing for at least 12 to 13 hours. We're going to document it.
12 to 13 hours? What is this amateur bullcorn?
So, let's go through the... What?
More than 12 to 13 hours.
Good call.
That only put us at 11 o'clock.
Okay, that's what I like to hear. Getting serious now. And hey, look, they even picked up the collector's edition, so you gotta give them some respect. And of course, they've come prepared.
Could that be supplies for today's a special event?
Yes.
Hark,
I'm gonna
show
be
us.
locked in here. Oh no.
Yeah!
Now that's what I like to see. Okay, as far as food is concerned, your first tip is to get the most unhealthy stuff imaginable. Dr. Pepper, Doritos, Hot Pockets. This is fuel for true gamers. The trick is to deny your body of real food. The combination of constantly being on the brink of death and the non-stop diarrhea will prevent you from sleeping, thus allowing you more time to get those precious levels.
What level are you done? 5. Silk, it's 340. What's your status?
Angry?
Why is that?
Because of lag. And I keep getting booted. And I can't see my body.
Anger because he keeps getting booted? Well, then it's definitely the original release. But take note, no matter how pissed you get, you never stop playing. Just pound another chocolate pudding cup and get back in there. And speaking of which though, let's talk a bit more about your food of choice. We're off to a good start here. Dr. Pepper, love that DP, Doritos, chocolate pudding, but your feces is still a bit too solid at this point. Just to be sure, let's throw in some gummy bears, some nachos, and of course the go-to staple, Taco Bell. Of course having your mom order and deliver it to you. We don't want any social interaction now, do we? Diapers are also going to be crucial. Just because you have to go to the bathroom a lot doesn't mean you should be away from your computer. However, if you want a more long-term investment to save yourself some cash, you may want to look into something like this. And as for your entertainment of choice, you have many options. You always have the sweet comfort of twitch.tv/MadSeasonShow to guide you along in your journey. I even completed my initiation and I'm participating in the cat throwing Olympics, the sport of choice for any Twitch streamer. But that's about it. The release of Classic isn't far now. I hope that you're leaving this video a bit more prepared and you're ready for the World of Warcraft.
Farewell for now, mortals. We hope you enjoyed today's video. See you again soon.